It's a tough choice. Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, you need eventually to choose who's going to be your lead driver and who's going to go for the championship.
It's a big year for Red Bull, isn't it? They've lost Adrian Newey. I think there are probably a lot of people in that team who want to prove something to the watching world.
McLaren now defending champions, they have absolutely no excuses anymore, especially if they've got, as it seems they do, although it's very close, the quickest car.
F1 is back, everybody. The new season is here and there are so many questions. Will Max Verstappen equal Michael Schumacher's record of 5 world titles in a row? Will Lewis Hamilton win a record-breaking 8th championship in his first season with Ferrari? Or will we crown a first-time champion in 2025? Formula One is set to celebrate its 75th anniversary with an unbelievable year of racing on track, and we're going to follow all the action right here on F1 Nation, the official Formula One podcast taking you trackside for race reviews and previews from inside the F1 paddock. I'm Tom Clarkson, and joining me ahead of the season-opening Australian Grand Prix this weekend is former Haas, Lotus and Renault driver Romain Grosjean and F1 TV presenter Laura Winter. Guys, it is great to have you both with us. Romain, why don't we start with you? Just describe how it feels at this moment for the drivers getting on the plane for the first race.
Well, it's always exciting, you know. I think Australia being such a long trip, such a cool country and a cool Grand Prix as well. You have some ideas from winter testing. You think you know better than the others. You hope your car is as good as it looked or better than it looked in testing. But it's definitely one of the most exciting one of the year, just because, you know, you haven't raced for a couple of months. You're itchy and you just want to go for it.
Yeah, it's the honeymoon period. Everyone is a world champion as we speak right now, right? But actually, Laura, you were testing in Bahrain. Give us the main headlines.
Yeah, long days and cold days in Bahrain, 24 hours of running out on track, 25 if you count the one extended day due to the power outage at the circuit. I think the headlines coming out of it is very much that Lewis Hamilton looked comfortable to an extent in the Ferrari, but it was pretty incredible to see him driving a red car, dressed in red with that yellow helmet. McLaren, long run pace, looked very impressive on day 2 when it was cooler, but in slightly inferior conditions on day 3 wasn't quite the same as we were seeing. Red Bull seem a little bit of an unknown, and Mercedes seem to really enjoy testing, but cooler conditions, and we know their car loves that. From the pack behind, both Alpine and Williams, we felt took a bit of a step forward. Williams perhaps more so. And I believe it was Carlos Sainz had the fastest time overall as well from testing. And obviously times don't really mean anything and it's just testing and all that stuff. But Williams had a much smoother pre-season than they had certainly last year. So they'll be buoyed by that. And then behind that, Aston, VCarb, Sauber seemed to have a relatively more tricky testing, although nobody had a really, really difficult one. And Haas were doing something a little bit different, quite methodical stuff, not looking to light up the timing sheets, kind of sticking to their own stuff and getting the job done, as we saw them do last year as well. I think the reliability of these cars was also a massive headline as well. We saw so many laps from so many teams, and I think it's looking to be one of the closest seasons ever.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is 3 days of testing condensed into about 40 seconds.
Just about, yeah.
Well done, Laura. Hey, Romain, how much of an outlier is Bahrain? Is the Bahrain International Circuit a good test track?
Well, I think it's good because, you know, well, not this year, but normally you know which weather you're going to get. And, so many winter tests in Barcelona where everything got cancelled because it snowed or it was too cold, it was raining, same in Jerez. But you're right, it's a circuit that is a bit different than the others, as Melbourne Park is, as the first few races of the year are actually. So I think, you will need to wait the first 4 or 5 Grand Prix to have a much better idea of who's going to be fast. And as Laura say, I think it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be down to who nailed the lap, who does the best setup work for the weekend, and who conditions actually favor on that particular weekend.
I mean, reading between the lines, tell me if I'm wrong, Laura, you were there, I wasn't, but it seemed to me that the pecking order in Bahrain was pretty much how we left it in Abu Dhabi at the last race of last year, but maybe a little bit closer.
Yeah, I think so. I've been sort of agonising over a prediction for the year ahead. You know, at this time of year, you're asked that. And I would say so. I don't know if Alpine and Williams will have jumped up the order a little bit and Aston Martin jumped down, but I think that pecking order could well and truly change 5 races in. Adrian Newey has just joined Aston Martin. I can't imagine they're going to be languishing in 7th or 8th for very long. But how much of their attention is going to be on 2026? And that's one of the key points, obviously, for this season, is the balance and the compromise between developing a 25 Challenger, between pushing for P5, P4, P1s, and then ultimately focusing their attention on 2026 and getting a bit of a jump start on the new regulations. So, yes, I don't think we're going to see too many surprises necessarily. A lot of cars were very much an evolution, a development, and not a revolution, shall we say. But it just looks incredibly close and really hard to tell. And the weather was a little tricky as well in terms of being representative of what we are used to and can look at and can compare to last year, for example. So I just caveat pretty much everything I've said from testing and here on this podcast with... We're not sure. It's testing. We don't know fuel loads and sensors. And we'll have to wait until at least the first race in Melbourne, basically.
Let's have a look at the title contenders now. Why don't we start with Max Verstappen, the reigning champion? Romain, let's get the driver's perspective on him. Is Max the best driver on the grid?
That's a tough question, isn't it? He's definitely one of the best ever. There's no doubt about Max's ability to drive a car, drive it fast in every conditions. I think, saying he's the best is difficult because you're only the best if you're with the best car, but he's definitely an incredible driver no matter what car he's driving. I think his strengths that he always find 100%, pure 100% of the grip he has, no matter if it's raining, if it's cold, if it's hot, if it's new tire, if it's old tires. While maybe some other drivers are sometimes at 90%, some other time 105%. It seems that with Max, you never even 99.9, you're always 100.0%.
Laura, do you think Red Bull are going into Melbourne feeling a little bit undercooked? It looked a little bit of a messy test in Bahrain. They got, I think, the fewest laps of anybody. There were a few teething problems, particularly for Liam Lawson on day 2.
Yeah, it's really hard to say, isn't it? Because I think we've seen Red Bull come out of testing quite anonymously and quietly before, and then they've obviously come into the race and been light years ahead. This one feels like the most close to reality, though, perhaps, that there is an element of cloak and dagger, sandbagging. They're not trying to hide any elements of a new car. They brought out a new nose on day 3, but besides that, there weren't huge, shocks to their car like we saw with the side pods in previous years. And obviously this year they have, obviously there is much debate over what a rookie is for this season because we have 6 drivers who are all entering their first full season, but Liam Lawson has 11 Grand Prix under his belt. But he's a relatively inexperienced driver compared to Max Verstappen's former teammate in Sergio Perez. So on paper, they are therefore a weaker outfit if you combine both drivers together. It seems to me that Red Bull aren't firing in the way that we've seen in the last couple of years, and we saw that through the sort of development curve the wrong way for them last season, the way that they just fell away from any kind of title contender. But equally, I saw in the pre-season testing interviews, Christian Horner was saying that this iteration of the car looks to correct some of the wrongs of the car, not just from 2024, but actually from 2023. So when perhaps Sergio Perez began to really struggle in the Red Bull, they can take the problems back and pinpoint them to that period. And they're still looking to correct some of those issues with the car. So it seems on paper that they're not quite there, yes. And it would seem the most so of the last 4 years, for example.
It's a big year for Red Bull, isn't it? They've lost Adrian Newey to Aston Martin. They've lost Jonathan Wheatley to Sauber/Audi in 2026. I think there are probably a lot of people in that team who want to prove something to the watching world, that it wasn't just those 2 headline names getting the job done. There's strength in depth at this team.
Yeah, I think you're right. But it's also a winning machine. You know, they've been winning for a very long time. They've been competitive for a very long time. But like everyone, they were super successful between 2010 and 2013, and then they went through a bit of a more difficult path. And then Mercedes took over, and Mercedes went through a more difficult path. Now it seems that McLaren is taking over, and Red Bull is maybe going to that difficult path again. You can't stay at the top of your game all the time. I think there's regulation change, there's new people coming. But yeah, you're right. They lost some very big names, but I truly believe as well that behind they also have it covered. You know, they have still Pierre Vacher there, and behind Adrian Newey and those guys, there was a lot of very intelligent and brilliant engineers. So even though we may not know their name, I think they're going to be all right.
I'm in no doubt, though, that it is Max Verstappen that is the gel keeping all that together. You can just watch him around people in the team. He energizes people. And if Max Verstappen were to leave on a performance clause at the end of the year, if they don't get the job done, Romain, I see a lot of parallels, I think, between what would happen at Red Bull as to what happened at Benetton in the mid-90s when Michael Schumacher left that team. Because when Michael left, all of the top engineers left, Ross Brawn left, Rory Byrne left, etc. And it took Benetton 10 years to come back and be a strong team again. And I would see something similar happening at Red Bull. I think Max is that integral to the performance there.
There is a possibility that you're right. I think every champion is, of course, a very good driver. There's no doubt about that. But it's more than just being a driver. I think it's being a leader, being someone that is able to pull the team in the right direction whenever it's needed, to motivate everyone. You know, I think this year, when you look at the calendar, it's going to be so difficult physically for the humans being in Formula One, that winning races, having someone that you know is always going to give his 100% and always do the best job that you can, it's going to do an even bigger difference than before.
This is an advertisement from BetterHelp. We like to think we can handle everything on our own, but the truth is, no one does it alone. Not in life, not in business, and not in any great achievement. The best leaders and mentors I've ever met do not have all the answers, but they always know when to ask for support. And that's one of the greatest lessons I've learned from them. In a world that glorifies hyper-independence, it's easy to forget that having a strong support system makes all the difference. And that's where therapy comes in. It's not just for life's big struggles. It can help you navigate everyday challenges, build positive coping skills, set boundaries, and become the best version of yourself. And with BetterHelp, getting support has never been easier. As the world's largest online therapy provider, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/F1Nation. That's betterhelp.com/F1Nation. Let's bring it on to McLaren. Laura, what did you see in Bahrain? I saw a lot of uncompleted laps, actually. We didn't really see... I felt we didn't really see what they could do. Is that right?
Yeah, they were bailing out of a few performance laps, weren't they? Purple sector 2 and then poof, into the pit lane and be like, come on, give us the time over the line. And I think one of them, Lando, went wide, and we'll never know what might have been in terms of some of those performance push laps. But in speaking to the team and in watching their demeanour around the paddock and in the garage, pre-season testing went very, very well for McLaren, is the gist of what I got from Andrea Stella, from Lando Norris. They were very happy with the car. It felt for much of the team like they were very much picking up from Abu Dhabi and kicking on for 2025, and that everything that they were putting into their car in terms of development over the winter was working. Andrea Stella seemed to me a very, very happy man when I spoke to him on day 3. And I think we saw that reflected in the long run pace. They were some 4 or 5 tenths ahead of the equivalent of George Russell and Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes. I don't think we have a sort of direct comparison in terms of what Max Verstappen might have been doing on day 3, obviously with conditions being different. But it looked to me that McLaren are very much in the driving seat heading into this season. I think if you wanted to you had to name right now who was going to win the Constructors' title, I think most people would probably say McLaren, based on a very solid test and based on the attitude and I think the demeanour of the team around them as well. They seemed a happy bunch and the car looked quick.
You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable to win in Formula One. That is Andrea Stella's big saying, and it seems they are happy doing that thing. Laura, do you think they need to change their sort of philosophy if they're going to win the driver's title? Can you beat Max Verstappen in a Red Bull or Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari or George Russell in a Mercedes if you give equal treatment to both of your drivers?
I think that's the key for McLaren this year, isn't it? It's about how they will deal with their two drivers' ambitions, their two drivers' competitiveness and ability and talent. Neither want to be number two. I think that's pretty much clear. Contractually, they're not number one and number two drivers. We saw that play out last season. I think they'll probably apply a similar plan from last season of, okay, as one driver may need more support because they're clearly in a more advantageous position in the Drivers' Championship, they will receive that. But both drivers have made absolutely no secret of the fact they both want to win the drivers' title and the team title as well. And two does not go into one. You know, they may finish P1 and P2, but you've also got Max Verstappen in there, you've got Charles Leclerc in there, you've got Lewis Hamilton in there, George Russell in there, you know, if that Ferrari and Mercedes are really competitive as well. So it's really tricky, but they are going to have to, I think, take a lot more initiative early on than they did last year. There was a fair few races where they were more reactive to balancing out those driver ambitions, and we saw it playing out in real time on track and over the radio. They were making decisions that you argue should have been made in the briefing room before, if not in the week before. And we were seeing it on, you know, playing out on the radio and between driver and engineer. And so I think they'll have learned lessons from that, undoubtedly. They are now champions. They are now, as Romain mentioned earlier, that winning mentality that we see Red Bull and Mercedes have had in the past. McLaren now have to come into a season with that. They're no longer the team trying to win. They're the team who have won. They're the team who are defending that win. They are defending champions. They have absolutely no excuses anymore to hide behind. And so they have to get things right, from strategy to team management to driver management on track. And especially if they've got, as it seems they do, although it's very close, the quickest car.
Romain, do you think Lando Norris needs to get his elbows out in a race situation? We've seen him be brilliantly quick in qualifying. What was he, 24, I think, was the ratio in qualifying between him and Oscar Piastri last year. But would you like to see him do anything different in a race against Max Verstappen and the like?
I don't know. I know it's been a topic. I know there's been a lot, but you know, putting your elbow out is great. But if you don't finish the race, well, who is it? Jackie Stewart saying to finish first you need to finish. And putting your elbow out may mean that you don't finish the race, and that's what Max was ready to do sometime last year because he had the lead. So it depends the situation we're in. I think Lando does a great job. I think there was something about the start when he was on board, and I think there was a lot of talking for no much, and he corrected it later. I do think that McLaren is in a very, very tricky situation because they have both fantastic drivers, both very fast drivers, young drivers, and it's not like one or the other wants to, you know, kind of take it easy to coast down to the end of his career. They're both at the beginning of the career. So I think McLaren is going to have to make some choices, very difficult choices. You're right. It's difficult to, and we've seen it with every team in Formula One. And McLaren knows it very well from the past. Remember Prost and Senna? I mean, it didn't end up the best way. And
it didn't end well. Yeah.
But it's the reality of Formula One. You know, we always say your teammate is your first opponent. It's the only guy that has the same tool as you. And you want to beat him as even harder than everyone else. So I think that's going to be the managing part. That's going to be very, very tricky with McLaren. They've done everything else fantastic. I think Lando and Oscar are both fantastic drivers. I don't think there need to be elbows out. I think there needs to be a clear path of what they want to achieve and how they want to achieve.
Lewis Hamilton is dressed in red, as Laura said. It was great seeing him at the Bahrain test doing that. It was great actually seeing both of them in Milan last week when they did that demo run in front of 20,000 tifosi. And there's such a vibe around Ferrari as we go into the new season, isn't there? I mean, guys, what do you think? Let's start with Lewis. What do you think are Lewis Hamilton's biggest challenges as he embarks on his Ferrari career?
I think naturally you've got the challenge, and Romain, you can maybe speak to this, obviously, in changing team yourself in Formula One, of adapting from a team that you've spent years with and have enjoyed the most successful partnership in the history of the sport with in Mercedes. And then you have to suddenly adapt, not just from the way in which Mercedes operate and those really intricate 1% that they operate in and every Formula One team will operate in. You have to then change language, you're changing country, you're going from Mercedes to Ferrari, which is one of the oldest teams in Formula One. You have to adapt to entirely new personnel, a new team around you, and he's brought in obviously Angela Cullen for a little bit of familiarity as well, his old trainer. So firstly, he has to adapt. And I think, Lewis has said it's gone better than expected, or as well as it could have possibly gone. But there still comes a challenge and a mental load and a physical load with that, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the adaptation, we're talking adaptation, but 99% is already adapted. He's one of the most talented driver. He knows how to drive a car. Doesn't matter the color, doesn't matter the steering wheel shape. He's going to be fast and he's going to know how to do it. But then you're in Formula One. And in Formula One is the last person that makes a difference, right? So getting that last person is going to take some time, understanding the language with your engineer, understanding what the car needs to be fast, what's the philosophy behind it. I was very lucky that I drove the Mercedes engine as well as the Ferrari engine. So I kind of work with both teams. And yes, they are 100% different. They almost the opposites, but they both have a very good way of doing it. I think where Lewis got a great help is with Fred Vasseur, that he knows very well from the past. And I drove for Fred in junior category. He's one of those characters that is very difficult to explain what he does, but he does it well. And I think for Lewis, having that comfort and that support, knowing that there's someone that and you trust and you can rely on, it's going to make things easier. I'm not saying he's not going to win Melbourne, because Ferrari is always strong in Melbourne. But I'm saying that it can take a little bit of time to get adapted. Sometimes it goes very smooth. Sometimes everything works really well. But sometimes it just takes a little bit more work. And yes, mental load and so on and so forth on a very high season.
I think there's a huge hype around Lewis at Ferrari as well. And that's another percentage he's got to deal with of, he's already under so much pressure and under the spotlight because he is Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion. Add to that this potential fairy tale move to Ferrari that could result in a record-breaking 8th, then it's just an absolute fever pitch. In a fever pitch that's already Formula One in 2025. The sport's just in its most frenzied place I've ever known it. How he operates with Charles Leclerc, and that's not how he gets on with Charles, because I think both drivers will get on very well with whoever their teammate is, and Charles proven that over the years with how he's got on with Carlos Sainz. But in how Ferrari place the onus on those two drivers, whether there is a number 1 and a number 2 within Ferrari, and how that's decided. Because you have Charles Leclerc, Ferrari's prodigal son, and you have a 7-time world champion. So who gets a priority here? And do Ferrari stick to their the plan they seemingly did before, which was whoever qualifies quickest gets preferential treatment and that they're the number 1 on the road? I don't know how that will look, and that's one of the dynamics I'm really intrigued by this season, is how Ferrari are going to place the priority on their drivers when you've got those two drivers.
It's a tough choice. I mean, McLaren is also in a tough position, but you're right. You have Charles Leclerc that has won Monaco, that has won Monza for Ferrari, that is their driver since forever. And then you have Lewis Hamilton, which is probably one of the biggest names of the sport and one of the biggest champion ever. And how do you deal with those two guys being in the same team? My guess would be that year one, maybe Charles gets, at least at the start, number 1 treatment because he knows the car very well. He's probably the one that knows the team better. But if things are going that Lewis starts being the lead driver, then they would have to choose one as well. And, as we mentioned, McLaren to beat Max Verstappen and Red Bull, but now to beat McLaren as well as Ferrari, you need eventually to choose who's going to be your lead driver and who's going to go for the championship.
I'm fascinated to see how Lewis sorts out, or otherwise, his qualifying pace, because that's been a big issue latterly at Mercedes. I think it was 19.5 in favour of George Russell last year. And with the grid being so close, as Sergio Perez found out at Red Bull last year, if Lewis is 0.3 behind Charles Leclerc in qualifying, and everyone thinks that Leclerc is one of the best qualifiers in the sport, 0.3 could be four grid rows. And then the issue is taken away from Fred Vasseur. So I'm guessing that a lot of Lewis's preparation over the winter has been one lap pace. I'm guessing too that having Loic Serra join the team from Mercedes as technical director, a guy who knows Lewis, a familiar face, knows how he works, that will help him as well. This episode is sponsored by Indeed. When you're moving fast, the right team makes all the difference. In business, just like in racing, you don't have time to waste. You need the right people and you need them quickly. I've never had to hire anyone myself, but if I did, I'd want it to be as quick and precise as an F1 pit stop. So yes, I go with Indeed. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of search results, so the best candidates see it first, helping you hire faster. And it works. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs get 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. No long-term contracts, no monthly subscriptions, just results. And in the time I've been talking, 23 hires have already been made on Indeed worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a £100 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/F1Nation. Just go to Indeed.com/F1Nation right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/F1Nation. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. Well, look, let's bring it on to the final title contender, if you like. Let's talk about Mercedes. Do you think we're going to see a different George Russell as he steps out of Lewis Hamilton's shadow and is the sort of de facto team leader there?
I think we're already seeing it. I spent a bit of time with the team in Germany for their launch with Adidas as their new sponsor. And there was just, if possible, because he's a tall bloke, George Russell was standing even taller. It just felt to me that he now knows he is out and out the leader of that team. He, as you say, he's stepping out of Lewis's shadow that undoubtedly, any driver would be in because it's Lewis Hamilton. And he has a younger driver now alongside him. And I've already seen a clip from preseason testing where he was giving Kimi some advice on kind of how to help the mechanics who are working so hard in the garage to make their lives a little bit easier. And he was doling out this kind of like big brother advice to him. So I think we're already seeing it. I think we are seeing George Russell 2.0 in a sense. And look, George Russell ended last season in great form. That Vegas weekend, all right, it was cold and the Mercedes loves cooler temperatures, but that Vegas weekend was pure domination. It was an amazing performance from him. One of his most complete weekends, if not the most complete weekend we've seen from George. So he's coming into this season off the back of that on a high, and now as team leader, I think we are going to see a slightly different George Russell.
For me, it started already kind of last year, where you could tell that he was becoming the lead Mercedes driver. He was the one qualifying always at the front. He has big shoes to fill, but I feel like it's been quite a smooth transition because on the sporting side, last year he was already the one taking the most of it.
I think also with George Russell, and we're seeing a few quotes come out in terms of his relationship with Max Verstappen as well. He's sort of saying it, isn't he? That I'm not going to stand by and be bullied. I'm not going to let other drivers be bullied by Max Verstappen. That's a quote on George Russell. Certainly not what I think of Max Verstappen's behaviour. That's coming from George himself. But already he started to do that, as Romain said, at the end of last season. He is standing up to Max Verstappen, who, he has said is sort of a bully or displays bullying behaviour. And that's another element of it, isn't it? And that's something that I think will continue this season. And I think if the Mercedes is competitive, I've no doubt those two are going to be a little bit closer together on track this season as well.
It's like he was laying the foundations, wasn't it? Laying down a marker with Max, and for all the other front-running drivers to take notice of. I'm not going to be pushed around. I think he probably realises that he hasn't got time to have a bedding in year with the 2026 regulations and everything that comes with that. If the car is good enough this year, it has to count. And therefore, He can't get pushed around. He's got to start on the front foot in Melbourne this weekend, and I think that's a lot of what it was about. I agree, Laura.
It's
completely.
a real statement, isn't it?
It is. Look, we'll come on to Kimi Antonelli in the minute. We'll talk about the rookies, but before we move on from Mercedes, Roman did want to ask one thing. What is the situation with your test drive?
Yeah.
Now, this has been cooking away for a long time. You've been on the sim, you've had a seat fit, but you haven't actually driven it. Have you spoken to Toto about it?
We have, and it's. I'm gonna be honest. It's on my side. It's my fault. I just haven't found the time recently to do that and to plan it properly. I think we had everything set up in 2021, but COVID didn't really help. So actually, right behind me is the helmet ready for the test. With the Mercedes logo on it. So I have everything ready. We just haven't found a date. To be honest, it's been pretty busy here in the US, and I mean, personally, I try to keep it as long as I can, because I think it would be cool to try a car that I haven't necessarily known. So maybe I'm keeping it for my 40th birthday, which come next year, as a present for myself.
Love that.
Well, I hope it happens.
I'm sure it will.
Hope it happens.
Yeah.
Now, 2025 is the year of the rookie revolution. We have 5 rookies on the grid. Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes, Ollie Behrman at Haas, Gabriel Bortoletto at Sauber, Jack Doohan at Alpine, and Isaac Hadjar at Racing Bulls. Guys, who do we think is the most exciting prospect out of those guys?
Well, that's a tough one. Yeah, I mean, Isaac being French, for me, of course, I have to go for him, right? I think Kimi Antonelli has got an incredible car so far and a fast-forward path to a top team in Formula One, so that's going to be exciting. Gabriele Bortoletto, I know him a little bit less. So, yeah, I would say that Kimi Antonelli and personally Isaac, because he's French, and that means a lot to me. So I'll follow those 2 guys.
Isn't Isaac called Le Petit Prost? I think that's what the French media have nicknamed Isaac. No pressure there, Isaac Hadjar. Laura, what do you think? Who do you think is going to be the most exciting?
For me, it's Kimi Antonelli, because there has been so much talk for so many years of this young man's career, and he's only 18, and people have been talking about him in Formula One since 11, 12, 13, and I think with all that hype, certainly in F2, with, Prema not firing on all cylinders through last season, we perhaps didn't see the very best of Kimi Antonelli with the likes of a really dominant F2 win that Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Charles Leclerc has done before, Gabriel Bortoletto has done before. So there was a lot, I think, unknown publicly about Kimi Antonelli's pace, form, how well he'll perform in Formula One, because people may not necessarily have seen it. But from everybody you see speaking about Kimi Antonelli behind the scenes and what they see, he is the next big thing. He is a generational talent. Mercedes could not miss out on him. There is so much hype around this kid. I just want to see him racing in a Formula One car now, and I want to see it come to fruition, because the one weekend where we got to see him in a Formula One car prior to pre-season testing, he binned it at Monza, and on the day before they announced him in the team. It was, not a weekend to remember for Kimi, that one. But I think the sort of defense of Kimi in that instance was, but look how fast he was. It's like, but probably a little bit too fast. But I think there's that notion, isn't there, in racing? Would you rather have a really fast racing driver that you have to pull back, or a slow racing driver that you can't speed up? And with Kimi, they have a racing driver who is undeniably, unbelievably quick, and therefore incredibly courageous, but equally has had some standout performances in the wet as well. And that's kind of the mark of a driver, isn't it? I think in testing, he was throwing the car around a lot. It was exciting to watch, certainly trackside, from those who reported back. So, Kimi, I'm excited to see what Kimi can do in that Mercedes, how he'll measure up to George.
It's interesting to hear you use the word courageous, because Mercedes engineering director Andrew Shovlin has told me that Kimi is, and I'm quoting Andrew now, unbelievably brave were the 2 words that he used. And I guess he overcooked it at Monza in the incident that you just described. And if he can just rein it in a little bit, I think from mid-season onwards, he could fly. And it's great to have an Italian back on the grid as well. Roman, how long do you think it'll take Kimi Antonelli to get up to speed?
I don't think it will take much. I think he's such a talented driver that it's gonna go fast. I wouldn't be surprised if Master's competitive to see him on the podium very, very early in the season. There's going to be rookie mistakes. There's going to be up and downs, as you would expect from a rookie, especially on such a high pressure as a Mercedes car. But it's definitely going to be very quickly, very fast.
Will he win a race? That's my question.
Will he win a race?
Season?
Yeah, that's a good question. I want to say yes, but I'm going to say no. I'm going to be on the cautious side, the Swiss side of me, because there's so much going into it. But I hope I'm wrong.
While we're talking about first-year people, do we think Liam Lawson can win a race if the car is there?
Depends how many Max wins.
Yeah, I think it depends on the Red Bull performance, doesn't it? I think because Liam does have that 11 race head start in a sense. Compared to the other rookies, if the Red Bull is up there and we have a bit of a, I think it would probably take a bit of a crazy race, a bit of a mad one. But we saw those last year where, as you said, Tom, that someone outside the top 4 teams could be winning a race this season. Well, there's no reason why Liam then can't also be up there at least. I mean, I think I'd be surprised if Liam Lawson didn't podium this year. I can say if the Red Bull is there.
So we've discussed Kimi Antonelli. Ollie Behrman, I think he's got a difficult task ahead of him. It's that sort of second season, second album. He's alongside Esteban Ocon, who is a brilliantly consistent racing driver. I think he's got a tough year ahead of him.
It does. But speaking with Ayo Komatsu, I think he's very happy with Bo's driver. He has experience of Esteban, knows him a little bit from the Ono days. And Ollie Behrman that is seen last year doing great job. So I think Ayo is excited. I think he's happy with his lineup. And for me, that's good enough to know that he's in a strong position.
Gabriel Bortoletto. He's a guy with very little pressure on his shoulders. I think if we learnt one thing in pre-season testing, I think it's that Sauber have still got a few car issues. So he can sort of learn away from the limelight. If he needs any advice, he's got Fernando Alonso as his manager. He seems very intelligent. I've heard Mattia Binotto, the team principal there, complimenting his soft skills, just his people skills within the team, the way he communicates with the engineers, the way he communicates with everybody at Hinwil. I'm quite excited about Bortoletto. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I spoke to Gabriel on the eve of his final F2 feature race, in which he was embroiled in this brilliant battle with Isaac Hadjar, another rookie who's come in to F1 this season with VCARB, obviously. And I was amazed at how calm he was. And I know that's a racing driver thing. I get very emotional and nervous watching and talking about sport. Often I find more so than the racing drivers in which I'm interviewing, because it's your job, Roman, isn't it not, to control those emotions. Whether you're in the car or out the car, it's keeping those emotions in check and keeping that laser focus, that cool mentality. And I thought just Gabriel had that. He was so cool about it, and he had this one race to get it done, and they were coming in so closely together. I was mightily impressed with him. I spoke to him briefly in preseason testing, and every time you see him in the paddock, he's got a smile, he says hello, he's polite. He's a really lovely kid. And I think you're right. I think with Sauber, and obviously their focus on 26, he does have an opportunity in which he can learn and make mistakes, but be so in a car that isn't necessarily at the pointy end of things, so perhaps has a bit of time therefore. And he's got a very experienced teammate in Nico Hülkenberg, who I really hope will be a bit of a big brother, uncle to him. Uncle, I guess Nico's late 30s, isn't he? I don't know if that's a big brother, but an uncle, shall we say, or a very much big brother to him.
And Hülkenberg is really quick, right? Particularly over one lap. So if he can hold a candle to Hülkenberg in qualifying, then that's a really good indication for us as to how good Bortoletto is. Last one we haven't spoken about is Jack Doohan. He's got one race under his belt. I think he finished 15th in Abu Dhabi at the end of last season. It's a difficult atmosphere for him to be coming into. The shadow of Franco Colapinto is hanging over him. I feel he's under unnecessary pressure at this stage.
Yeah, I'm a bit gutted for Jack Doohan that his first season can't be one that he's being given the grace and time and space that it seems that Kimi Antonelli is and Gabriel Bortoletto are, for example. Because, and this is, nothing against Franco Colapinto, who's also just wanting to be a Formula One driver on that grid. But Jack isn't being given the time. He's not even being given, he's been written off before the car's even hit the track in 2025. And I think that's a really difficult position for any driver, any young driver to be in. But I know that will be countered by, that is the sport. That is the sport. Everybody wants a seat. There are only 20 of them, and it can be incredibly cutthroat.
His best answer is to be fast in Melbourne. We know the team has very high esteem for Pierre Gasly. If he can be anywhere close in front or nearby Pierre, then there's no more questions to ask yourself. But it's definitely starting with knowing that you have to achieve that, or you may be on a rocket ship to a different place.
Romain, what is your advice to the rookies? You've been there, you've done it. In year one, where does your focus need to be?
Pretty much everywhere. It's definitively a tough one, and I think it's who you're dealing with and who are the person next to you to help you navigate the maze of Formula One. I think that's very, very important. I think every driver that makes it to Formula One knows how to go fast over a lap, knows how to go fast over a race. But it's then how you understand the world, realize what's going on, and play your part in it. It's not all about driving. And I think for any driver going to Formula One, and there are teams that are a lot better than others at doing that. For young drivers, it's navigating the secrets of Formula One.
What's the biggest step, do you think? What's the biggest adaptation? Is in terms of, okay, you've just said there, the car, the people around you, the media attention. Is there one that stands above the rest?
The easiest way to put it is you're a Formula 2 driver. You're just a driver. All you are being asked to do is to drive the car fast and win the championship. Then you get to Formula 1 and you're a brand representative. You are a team leader. You are one of the only 20 drivers in the world doing Formula 1. You become like, a star of a big thing, especially nowadays with Formula One being such on a hype. It's just not only driving anymore. Driving is a nice part of it, but it's actually a very small amount of everything you do.
I've got it ingrained on my head, Romain. Your debut at Valencia in 2009. I remember this guy coming into the paddock with big hair, but he did a brilliant job in the car. I think you qualified just 0.3 of a second behind Fernando Alonso in the same car. And I think the watching world was blown away, quite frankly, by the job you did that weekend. How difficult was it to maintain that level at the subsequent races? Did you get distracted by all the attention?
I did not, and I was never told I did a good job in Valencia, by anyone involved. And that's why I think whoever are the people working with you and your close friends, not friends, but like your inner bubble into your Formula One world is very important. That they're here for the good, but the bad. They're here to give you the good advice, but also to tell you when you do things wrong. And I was kind of left on my own and had no much idea of what I had to do. And I wish I could do the first year again and be different. I think performance-wise, I'm still very proud of everything I've done. I wish I just had understood a little bit more the big picture and not only think that what would matter was the lap time.
So fascinating. Right, Liam Lawson has competed in 11 races, so he's technically no longer a rookie, but this is set to be his first full season in Formula One. And as Max Verstappen's new teammate at Red Bull, he's in what many people believe to be the toughest seat in Formula One. I spoke to Liam for the first F1 Beyond the Grid podcast of the year to find out how he's approaching that challenge.
It's more the opportunity to have him as a teammate to learn off. For me, for my growth in Formula One, we're always learning. There's really nobody better to learn off. He's literally the best at the moment in the sport. So we did a test last year, a comparison together in Silverstone, and it was just one lap each. But that data I took home, I've got it sitting in a shelf. I took it home and had that all year just because it was the first time ever that I'd been able to compare directly against him and see exactly what he does as a driver. And although it's one lap and it's, it was just important to have that. So, and now I get that in every single session this year.
You got any of Fernando Alonso's data in a in a container somewhere in your apartment, Romain?
Fernando was so good at hiding a little bit of things here and there. And I remember Suzuka, and I was faster than him, FP1, FP2, FP3. So we go to qualify. I'm like, I'm going to get him, right? And he got me 3/10 in Spoon Corner. He had never done the corner properly the whole weekend, kept it in his back pocket. And then I got, overqualified. I'm like, God damn it. But it was Fernando was very impressive, yes.
Can you relate to what Liam has just said, though, about being able to learn from the data of Max Verstappen?
Absolutely. I'm a guy that only watch data. I never really watch videos on board. I know some drivers love it. I just trust data and look at them and do mathematics and, brake 5 meters later here, accelerate 3 meters earlier here, carry more minimum speed, turn earlier, turn later. But data for me are very, very important, yes.
And if you want to hear the full chat with Liam on the F1 Beyond the Grid podcast, it's available from Wednesday. Search for F1 Beyond the Grid on your podcast app, and you can watch it on the official F1 YouTube channel. This episode of F1 Nation is sponsored by Vanta. Whether you're just getting your business's security program off the ground or looking to take it to the next level, proving your security practices and building trust has never been more important. And that's where Vanta comes in. It takes the headache out of compliance by automating security for frameworks like ISO 27001 and SOC 2, plus the latest European regulations like the EU AI Act, DORA and NIS 2, saving you time and money while helping you build that all-important customer trust. More than 10,000 global companies, including Synthesia, Flow Health and Alica Bank, trust Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time, helping them stay compliant while building confidence with customers. So for a limited time, get a special offer of $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/nation. That's VANTA.com/nation for $1,000 off. Well, what about best of the rest? Let's list Williams, Aston Martin, Alpine, Sauber, Racing Bulls, Haas. What to look out for? Should we start with Williams? They've got Carlos Sainz. They were fastest of everybody in Bahrain. Laura, you mentioned it right at the top of the show that they're looking in better shape, enough to challenge for podiums.
I think it would be a pretty amazing story, from not having a spare chassis this time last year to challenging for podiums now. I think that's an incredible upturn in form, and James Vowles has said that he's seen a world of difference in that garage. Everywhere he looks around, the quality has gone up and up. Alex Albon was also up there in times as well. It wasn't just Carlos Sainz who was sort of looking quickest. I think Albon finished P3 on the final day, and obviously slightly different conditions as it was a little bit warmer. But no, Williams had a much smoother pre-season testing. I know we can't read too much into times, but I do believe that they will have made a jump from where they finished last season to how they start this one. I do believe we'll see them. I mean, as things stand, for me, they were very much best of the rest alongside Alpine, pushing up to that P5, P6 position.
It's good to have a driver that has won races, that has been with big team. It kind of confirms the direction you're going. It's an important message for the partners as well. So yes, it's key. I think Alex Albon's got the speed, but Carlos got the speed, the name, and the fact that he's already won races. So that's always good to keep in your background.
But all of these teams that I've just listed have a massive opportunity in 2026 with the regulation changes to leapfrog up the order. Should they ignore this year? Is 2025 just to be got through and it's all about preparation for 2026? Whether you finish 7th in the Constructors' Championship or 6th, does it really matter when you can make such a difference next year?
For some team, it's an easy decision. At least for one team, I guess it's an easy decision. For the others, they still want to fight for that 5th in the Constructor. They realistically know that 5th in the Constructor is what they can do. And it represents quite a bit of money. So no one is happy going to a racetrack knowing that you're not going to be competitive. It's why you do Formula One. It's because you love the sport, you're passionate about Formula One, you're a competitor, and you want to do well. So I can tell you that they've focused quite a lot on this year right now. For sure, at one point in the season, they'll shift their focus towards next year. But as of now, I think everyone wants to win Melbourne.
But if you're James Vowles, if you're Andy Cowell, if you're Oliver Oakes, etc., do you continue to develop the 25 car at the expense of the 26 car?
Well, it's finding that right balance in between shifting your focus gently, but keeping. I think you need to keep an eye on what's happening on track. And as I say, it's very important for those teams to try to be competitive and carry on and getting that fifth in the constructor. But yes, they already have a lot of people working on 2026. It's a huge change on a lot of things. But at the beginning of the rules, that's where you get the most gain for, the kind of easiest gain, I would say. Now that we get towards later in the season, they would have to shift a lot more manpower to find the smaller game, but the one that make the difference.
Laura, who do you think is going to finish fifth in the Constructors' Championship? Who's going to lead that mid-grid rabble?
At the end of the season, or come Melbourne?
No,
I've actually written
at the end of the year.
I've got a little prediction pecking order here, and I've written Aston and I've written Alpine. So I'm on the
P5
for P5 with Williams in the mix there as well. So I'm on the fence. And I'm really unwilling at this point of the season to commit to anything because we don't know, because it's just testing. But yeah, Alpine or Aston probably. I can't see Aston, with knowing the ambition that team has, even with the focus on Newey and 2026, I can't see them just throwing away an entire year with Fernando Alonso in that team as well. I do think that they'll come through. It was a difficult pre-season test. Both drivers were unwell. They didn't get through the amount they wanted to do. The power outage kind of messed a lot of stuff up on the first day for them. So it was tricky. So I don't think we've seen the best of them and the full scope of what they're capable of. But I think the car definitely looked more stable cornering as well, which is something that they really wanted to improve coming into this year. So improvements may have been made. We just haven't seen the full scope. It's a very long way of saying I'm unwilling to say, but I have in my final list written Aston. I just can't see them throwing it all away for 26, yeah.
Well, they've been P5 for the last 2 years. I still see them as a team in transition. 248 new people on board in the last 12 months. They've got Honda coming on in 26, so there's a lot of time and effort being put into the integration of Honda into the team as well. So I feel there's a lot going on away from the racetrack for Aston, and I think they will have actually had a good season if they finish P5 while ramping up for 26. Alpine, your old team, Romain, your old manager, back on the scene, Flavio Briatore. They certainly look better in testing, didn't they? Much better than 12 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the 2024 season and the way they get back into a competitive car, for sure they're gonna carry on that momentum towards 2025. And yes, they looked a lot better. I think they're starting to put the team back into a nicer place than it was, and they have Flavio back. Flavio knows how to win races and championship from the past. So I guess they have all the ingredients that they need to move forward again in the packing order.
Hey, Romain, we got to talk about Haas. I mean, Io's in charge. Actually, they've made big changes in the garage. New race engineers. You've spoken to Io, you say. What's the mood in the camp? Are they confident?
The mood is pretty good. I think Io has a very clear vision of what he wants to do, and I think that helped the team tremendously last year, getting better and better. He's a fantastic team principal, and he's a fantastic racer. He's passionate about racing. He's a good man as well. So I think a lot of people that were in the team once Io was appointed were happy and knew what they were going into it. And I think Io may have surprised a few people in how good he's done, but I think he has his vision, he has his idea, he has his direction, and he's going to follow it, and I think it's going to work.
One last driver I wanted your thoughts on, guys, is Yuki Tsunoda. Overlooked in favour of Liam Lawson for the second Red Bull seat. Difficult time for him last year. He out-qualified Liam Lawson in the same car. Helmut Marko said recently this is a big year for him. If he doesn't beat Isaac Hadjar, the implication was from Helmut that his time in Formula One may not be too extensive beyond the end of this year. How difficult a moment is this? Let's get the racing drivers' thoughts first of all.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting to follow Yuki's and the way Red Bull managed the whole situation. He never really got the chance, while a lot of other drivers got the chance to drive the Red Bull, and Yuki didn't seem to have that chance. He's a fantastic driver. He's a nice character. But I don't know, it feels like something is holding him back into the Red Bull camp. I don't know what it is, but from the outside, it's just what it looks like. He's done really good. He's done dumb stuff like everyone does, but I think it's deeper than that.
Well, he's changed his management, hasn't he? Mario Miyakawa, who used to be Jean Alesi's manager and looked after Yuki up until the end of last year, is no longer on the scene. He's got a new guy in to try and appease Helmut Marko and find him a future in Formula One. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens there. Laura, your thoughts on Yuki?
Yeah, actually, in my preseason notes, I have written, will we see him on the grid in 2026? And that's not necessarily a reflection actually on how he's been driving, because we saw Yuki putting in some brilliant performances in a car that didn't deserve to be quite where he was putting it, quite frankly. And I think, he has been overlooked for that Red Bull seat for Liam Lawson. He's since changed his management, but now Honda are distancing themselves somewhat from him. So it's very uncertain, I think, where he will end up in 2026 and whether that is staying within that Red Bull family and with VCARB, with the likes of Arvid Lindblad in the wings and the speed in which this sport moves on. I'd love to see Yuki remain in the paddock and on the grid. I can't say for sure that we will. That's the nature of this ruthless business, isn't it? But yeah, Yuki's got a big year ahead of him.
Let's bring it on to Melbourne this weekend now. Romain finished P6 there back in 2016 at Haas's first ever Grand Prix. You were the first driver of the day that race too. Would you believe it? You've always been quick there. What is the secret to a fast lap of Albert Park?
You know what? It's a fantastic racetrack. It evolves during the weekend. It's a fantastic atmosphere in Australia. It's really one of my favorite Grand Prix that I've ever competed in. Yeah, I was surprisingly, I was always faster. I got very lucky in 2016 where we never did a pit stop, but out of the 9 times I think I went in Melbourne, 7 times I did not finish. So it's been, Australia's been rough on me, but I still love going there and always enjoy driving that racetrack.
Yeah, let's not mention 2018, please.
And 19.
And 19, crikey, yes, okay. I'm sorry, I'm bringing back all these really bad memories. Laura, what are you most looking forward to after getting off the plane in Melbourne?
The first coffee, I think. Brilliant coffee in Melbourne. And
it's the home of the latte,
exactly,
isn't it? Yeah.
And we all need it off the flight and jet lagged and whatever else. And sort of, I find coming out of the winter hibernation, you're sort of not quite primed, you're not travel ready, are you? You're not sort of like in the swing of the rigmarole of traveling. So no, but I just can't wait to be back at a racetrack with hundreds of thousands of fans and to get this season going. It feels like one of the most hyped in decades, doesn't it? And I think it's really lovely. This will be my first year going to Australia where it's the season opener. I've obviously only been in Formula One kind of through a full season since 2021. So for me, it'll be super exciting to see it as that first big opener that so many are used to in the paddock. I love the track. We've got a bit of jeopardy for the first race weekend with some pretty close walls and plenty of nightmares and crashes and so on in recent years for a number of drivers. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Aussies are going to do on home soil. It's never quite been a happy hunting ground for an Australian, really. But we've got Oscar Piastri and Jack Doohan, who both will really want to make a mark, not just for the season ahead, of course, but in Australia as well. I can't wait. I can't wait to be at the end of the race on Sunday and just have a bit of a clearer picture of what we're expecting this season as well. I think it's going to be fascinating.
It is, and it's such a carnival atmosphere, isn't it? The Melbourne Walk, the drivers having to do that 150 metres, signing autographs, chatting to the fans.
And you, Tom, you've been down. You walk down there, don't you? Fans calling your name.
You and me both, Laura. Actually, Roman, what is the Melbourne Walk like for a driver? Do you actually welcome it, or are you sort of deep breath? Because I think it takes Oscar Piastri 45 minutes to walk to the paddock.
You want to time it that you get to the same time as another popular driver, so you kind of swap position and you divide the time by 2. It's a fantastic idea. There's no doubt about it. But yes, as a driver, when you're in a bit of a rush or a bit jet lag, or not feeling that great, it's a long 150 meters.
Well, look, podium predictions for Melbourne. We've had a really good chat. We've discussed the title contenders, the mid-grid chaos, but who is going to be in the top 3 on Sunday? Who would like to start? Laura, you look like you're itching to tell us.
My face there for those listening was, oh my God, I don't know. Please don't come to me first. I'm going to say Lando, Norris, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc in some order. Maybe
you can't do
order.
that. You have to give us an order.
We need an order.
Roman, sorry.
Thank you, Roman.
Oh, I hate making predictions this early on. But most of mine are wrong, even mid-season anyway, to be honest. Okay, let's say, I do think we're going to see McLaren come out swinging. So let's say we'll see Lando Norris win. Oh, I've just said we're not going to have Oscar on the podium on a home race, though.
Clock is ticking, just like chess.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm going to check. I'm going to say Charles Leclerc P2, Oscar Piastri P3. Don't ask me what happens to Max, but he's not on the podium. I don't know.
I'll do Oscar, Charles, Lando.
In that order, okay.
In that, I had it from the beginning, just so you know. I had set that up from the beginning.
Oh, that's at least we've got the same podium then. That's nice.
And you're both very clear that McLaren, as Laura says, are going to come out swinging. I'm going to say something different because I think Ferrari have been keeping their powder dry so far. I don't think we've seen what they can do. Admittedly, in terms of ultimate lap time, we didn't see what McLaren could do, but there's something about Ferrari in Melbourne. The weather forecast is for rain at 3 p.m. on Sunday, so there's going to be jeopardy. And I've just got a feeling that one of the favourites isn't going to win. And favourites, I mean McLaren. So I see Charles Leclerc winning in Melbourne with Lewis Hamilton second and Max Verstappen third. Something is going to happen to McLaren. I don't know what, but I don't see it being a straightforward weekend for them. There you go. Well, while we're doing predictions, let's bounce forward to the end of the season. Can I have a Drivers' World Champion from both of you and a Constructors' World Champion?
I'm going to say Lando Norris and McLaren.
Well,
Désolé.
Just copy paste, please.
Right. Laura, why Lando? Why McLaren?
As Lando himself has said, there is nothing left for him to hide behind. There is no excuse now. They know what it takes to win. He won 4 races last year. He knows now, to an extent, how to go against Max. And I think that McLaren, unless Ferrari has something up their sleeve, like you say, Tom, I think that McLaren is in the absolute best place possible. And they've learned the lessons of strategy and driver management from 2024. So it's their year.
No, I think same. Lando and McLaren. I think McLaren is definitely going to be the strongest team. They have a very strong pairing, and I feel Lando is probably a bit more experienced than Oscar, and that could play in hand in deciding who's going to be number 1, number 2, who has more chances to win the championship.
I'm going to go for copy-paste, not of either of you two, of 2024. I think McLaren are going to win the Constructors' Championship. I think they're going to have the best car and they're going to put together the best season in terms of both of their cars. But I think it's going to be so close that a team that has the ability to favour one driver over the other one is going to come out strongest, and that is why Max Verstappen is going to win his 5th consecutive Drivers' Championship. There you go. That's my reasoning behind it. But, dear listeners, it's going to be incredibly close, and I think it's going to go down to the wire, and we're going to have a fantastic Formula One season. When you think about businesses that are absolutely selling through the roof, brands like Alo or Allbirds, you're probably thinking about great products, smart marketing, and strong branding. But here's the thing. The real secret to success is what's happening behind the scenes. It's what makes selling simple. And for millions of businesses, that secret is Shopify. Nobody does selling better. Shopify powers the #1 checkout on the planet, and with ShopPay, conversions can jump by up to 50%, which means fewer abandoned carts and way more sales. It doesn't matter if you're just getting started or already scaling. If you want to grow, you need to be selling wherever your customers are, online, in store, on their feeds. Shopify makes it all seamless. The secret's out. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/nation, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/nation to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/nation. One other big bit of news, which was just breaking as we recorded this show. The Cadillac Formula One team has been approved to join the F1 grid for the 2026 season, so there will be 11 teams in the sport for the first time since 2016. Cadillac are going to be backed by General Motors and TWG Motorsport, which runs teams in IndyCar, NASCAR and other racing series. They'll be using a Ferrari power unit in 2026, but they're building their own power unit to get on track as soon as possible. All this means a return to Formula One for Graham Loudon. He'll be Cadillac team principal. He was previously sporting director of the Marussia Formula One team, which competed in F1 for 7 seasons. Both the FIA and Formula One have said they're very happy to have Cadillac joining the grid, and so are we here at F1 Nation. And another group of people who will be happy are drivers who are trying to break into Formula One. 2 new seats for them to fight over. That's going to be exciting to talk about this season. There's much more about the new Cadillac Formula One team on Formula1.com and the F1 app.
Now, Tom, I've got a bone to pick with you, actually. Somehow you have kept your job as team principal of the pod's F1 fantasy team, F1 Nation Racing. I have to say, I was listening to the podcast religiously last year, driving to airports for various races, and was quite shocked at the team you were picking. I did not think it was going to be the best at all. And the pressure is growing on you after a pretty shocking 2024.
Can you help me, Laura?
I can. Last season, I won the F1TV Presenter League. And this came from, Tom, a 2023 in which I was dead last and really rubbish. So it was an absolute rags to riches story, this. And so I'm willing to help you here. Right. For those of you who've not played before, F1 Fantasy is free. You can create your team on the official F1 app or fantasy.formula1.com. You have a budget of $100 million to pick 5 drivers and 2 constructors. You can make transfers ahead of each race, and there are different chips you can play throughout the season to boost your points as well. So I think, well, the one thing that stood out for me last season, Tom, is that you were putting in a decent constructor and then one that was of a slightly lower standing. The ideal is
what's the correct strategy then?
As I discovered last season, it's to have 2 really good constructors because you get the double points from both drivers. So if you're putting in, for example, a Haas or with greatest respect, or a V-Carb, they're not picking up good points from their 2 drivers. So you put in the 2 good constructors. So for much of last season, I tried to have Ferrari and McLaren as my 2 constructors. You've then got a lot less money left to play with than you would do, obviously, for that driver. So you then have typically 1 really good driver until you build up your budget, and then you can put in 2 really good drivers. So you have your one really good driver. For a track like Melbourne, and for you, Tom, with your prediction, I would go with the Charles Leclerc. This all depends on budget, and I think the F1 Fantasy will become live this week, so we'll be able to see the budget very soon and how it all fits in. But I would generally say put in your big driver, 2 big constructors, and then fill the gaps with the rest. And having 2 drivers who also cheaper but gain lots of positions is really important as well. So a driver like Zhou last season often came back with a big points haul because he would qualify perhaps in P18, P19, but through virtue of whatever happened in the race, overtaking, he would finish maybe a P13, and that would get you quite a lot of points as well. Overtaking points, 2 big constructors.
Laura, this is genius. So who are we going to select for Melbourne? So 2 constructors, McLaren and Ferrari?
McLaren and Ferrari, and this is all on paper because I've not seen the budget. So I've not seen how much all of these teams and drivers cost. So this could very much be, pie in the sky thinking. But I would say McLaren and Ferrari as your 2 constructors, if you believe they will be the best 2 heading into Melbourne, which I think unanimously we do at the moment. You're then looking to get your one big driver in who you're hoping to score lots of points. So whether that is a Lando Norris, a Charles Leclerc, an Oscar Piastri perhaps, backing him on home soil, you choose that one big driver. The other drivers, you'll be looking at getting those that cost less, will qualify perhaps not as well, but could progress through the field. I mean, Nico Hülkenberg was a really good pick, and the Haas drivers brought back a lot of points for last season because Nico ultimately qualified well and then actually raced well as well. So he was often quite a good pick at a very good price. So it depends on all the pricing though, Tom. We don't know yet. I can let you know my final picks next week.
We will know soon.
We will.
Laura, that's genius. You are deputy team principal.
Am I?
Of F1 Nation Racing. That has just been decided right now.
Tom, I'm coming for your job. Why am I deputy? I tell you what, you can be CEO and I'll be team principal.
Oh, we're going to split it. Oh,
Well,
okay. We're going to be like McLaren.
I'll do the hard work. You confront it.
Oh, Laura,
dear.
that is so good. Thank you so much for your help. I hope that helps you at home as well. And if you fancy taking on us on F1 Nation Racing and other listeners this year, then do join the F1 Nation World Championship 2025. Roman, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and we'll see who is right on the pick.
Catch you soon. Laura, thanks to you as well.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Roman. Great to see you. And thanks as ever, Tom.
Qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix starts at 4 p.m. local time on Saturday, with the 58-lap race at 3 p.m. on Sunday. And in selected countries, you can watch all the racing live on F1TV, presented by Laura, and keep across all the action on f1.com or the official F1 app. And don't forget to check out the first F1 Beyond the Grid of the season with Liam Lawson on Wednesday. And we will, of course, be back next Monday from the Melbourne paddock with our review of the Australian Grand Prix. And thank you at home for listening. F1 Nation is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios.